explain to me what's going on. What is Donald Trump doing cutting deals with Democrats, and is it driving Republicans crazy?
Yes, it is driving them a little crazy. But look at the backstory here. First of all, Donald Trump isn't really a Republican, right? I mean, his nomination and victory amounted to a hostile takeover of the Republican Party. He never really worked very closely or had very strong relations with the key leaders. And you got to think of him more as an independent as president, not as a Republican. And he's been, add to the fact that he's been very frustrated. Here's a legislative record over 8 months of almost no accomplishments. And if you take out the approval of Neil Gorsuch as a Supreme Court judge, which is not really legislation, the record is even more skimpy. So he saw a chance to cut a short-term, modest deal with the Democrats, and he took it. I do think there are other issues in which this could happen again. I think the most obvious is DACA. This is of course, as our listeners know, 800,000 young people brought here as young immigrants. Very appealing young people, many of them working hard, joining the military, getting jobs, paying taxes. They're appealing to Democrats. They're appealing to Republicans. And I do think there's a possibility of a legislative fix there that would give them some measure of legal protection. The other area is health care. Everybody forgets that once the repeal and replace effort failed, that the insurance marketplaces need some help. And there are Republicans, Senator Alexander of Tennessee, working with Democrats to try to find a package of reforms that could shore up the insurance markets, with the very strong support of many Republican governors who are the ones on the front lines who have to deal with the flaws in the insurance market. So there aren't a lot of issues out there, but I can think of a couple where you might see other bipartisan deals.
What I don't understand, Stephen Roberts, you're a smart man. You can explain this to me. What I don't understand is why such backlash against Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan? Because if Mitch McConnell didn't play his cards right, Merrick Garland would be on the bench, not Neil Gorsuch. And I don't know what you want Paul Ryan to do otherwise. I don't know. I don't get the backlash for those two.
Well, I think you make a fair point, and you talk about Bannon saying that these guys, and as he said in that interview with Charlie Rose, that they were trying to nullify the election. They're not nullifying the election. It's the Democrats and the realities of legislating. You know, Bannon showed a very poor grasp, in my view, of the realities of American politics in that legislation. He failed to account for the fact that a lot of people voted for Trump despite his policies, not necessarily because of them, but even more, legislation by its absolute essential character involves coalitions, it involves negotiations, it involves compromise. That's the way the system works. Yeah, Republicans have 52 votes in the Senate, but they need 60 to pass most legislation. Yeah, they have a majority in the House, but they have 40, 50 hardline Freedom Caucus members who are not going to vote for any kind of legislative compromise. So McConnell and Ryan are not nullifying the election. It's the system itself. It's the American tradition and structure that forces compromise and forces negotiation before legislation can get passed. So an ideologue like Bannon, with very little legislative experience, is furious because his extreme ideology that he and Trump campaigned on is not being enacted into law. But that never happens. It never happens, and it shouldn't happen. And the American system is designed to make sure it doesn't happen. So yeah, you make a very good point, but you know, you can criticize certain decisions Ryan and McConnell made, but the real story here is the larger structure and spirit and texture of American politics, not these individual leaders.
Stephen Roberts, always a pleasure to hear your voice. Have a good week. Thanks for checking in.
Okay, sure.
Stephen Roberts, ABC News Political.